Welcome to today's webinar, Introducing HIDOC, High Impact Design for Online Courses. Just a very brief introduction from the three of us. My name is Bethany Simunich, and as Tom said, I do have a day job, but I'm not here under the banner of that day job. I'm actually on my lunch break. So here I'm putting on more of my ID hat, and Andrea and Penny and I came together early in the pandemic to collaborate and to write this book, and we all have kind of a little different perspective and angle. I started out as a faculty member, and I actually left full-time teaching once they asked me to teach a course online, and it did not go so well. And I actually then moved into becoming an instructional designer. So I've been in higher ed for over 20 years now, but the majority of that, over 15, has been spent specifically on online learning. After I became an instructional designer, I kind of started doing a lot more work in faculty development because faculty had the same problems that I did when I moved online. So I've really enjoyed my time in instructional design, and I've managed large instructional design teams and done training with that. And so my perspective to the book was a little bit more faculty and faculty development focused. Andrea, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Very excited to talk to this crowd. Always fun to talk to people who practice and are interested in ID. It's like speaking to my people. I also started as I started as an ID, have taught, but then lately have done more I'm in engineering now, doing work with micro-credentials, cross-disciplinary ID, and also doing research. My sort of passion and focus, and what I tell everyone that I work with here, is that my job is to advocate for the online learner and to think about what their actual learning experience is. So everything I do in terms of collaboration is to think about, okay, we think it means this. How do learners actually take it? And I've done some learner experience design research, and that's sort of my kind of focus and passion.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here today and see all the designers. Like Andrea said, this is our crowd, so we're really happy to be in a design group today. I've been a designer for over 25 years at 3 different institutions. Currently the lead designer on Penn State's new Doctor of Education program. So any of you with the master's out there may be interested in checking on that. It's a new program. And you might know me. I mean, to quote kind of Troy McClure, you may know me from ID topics such as student perspectives of quality or building collaborative faculty ID relationships. Those are my specialties and interests in the field. So again, glad to be here.
All right, so let's dig into the slides, and let's start with the what and why. So HIDOC stands for High Impact Design for Online Courses. We wanted to shorten it, make a nice little acronym, so we typically refer to the model as HIDOC, but it is an 8-step model for online course design. And we know, just as you know, that there are several really good instructional design models out there. So it begs the question, why did we develop a new one? Why did we need another one? Put very simply, HIDOC is specifically built for the unique needs of online courses and the online learning environment. So traditionally, IDs and faculty have adapted existing models such as ADDIE or backward design. Next slide. But really, it was that emergency shift to remote learning. As I mentioned, that we came together to collaborate really once the pandemic was kicking off and everybody was switching to that remote learning, especially in an emergency context. So that period in 2020, it really highlighted the need for something that was practical, faculty friendly, and was a stepwise model that really addressed these unique considerations and constraints of online learning, including things like designing for a web-based layout. That was one of the most difficult things for me when I was a faculty transitioning to online teaching. Things like aligning your technology and tools to your objectives and your other course components. And also, of course, providing unique supports to online learners, as Andrea mentioned. So there is a really big focus on supporting the learner, but also really being helpful to those faculty designers as well as you in your role as ID. So without an easy guide to designing for online, as you know, many faculties simply migrate their face-to-face course into the learning management system, and As we all know, that results quite often in a lower quality educational experience. It typically lacks things like teaching presence, student engagement, and whatnot. So HIDOC was designed to fill these gaps. It provides new approaches and experience for those of you that are experienced IDs or experienced online instructors, but also it's a really good, easy to follow model for those who are newer to online learning. So we sometimes describe it as, for faculty that are new to this, this is like an ID at your elbow. And throughout the writing of this, we kind of thought it's kind of like we're at a coffee shop and we're having these good conversations with faculty and guiding them through this. We also created a companion website. That's what you see there on the screen, hidocmodel.com, where parts of the book are available for free. And we had this thinking early on in the book, in the writing of it. We didn't want cost to be a barrier. So all of the design documents, for example, that we're going to talk about today, and Penny's going to give you a tour of the website towards the end, as well as excerpts from the book. They're all publicly available, free for you to use on the website. And so, worst case scenario, maybe your library has a copy of the book, and then you can use the design documents for free on the website. All right, next slide, please. So, getting back to the question of why a new design model, primarily also because modality matters. Modality matters a great deal when designing a course. It impacts lots of design elements like interaction, I mentioned, engagement, even the types of assessments that you might choose to put in the course. Also, online learners need different support and they need additional support than campus-based students, including things like help with technology and having those deeper connections with their online instructors. Especially also for asynchronous online courses, we all know it's ideal that that course is in the LMS up and ready to go before the start of class. So while we do talk in the book a little bit about teaching and some just-in-time teaching techniques, we know that just-in-time design doesn't work well for online learning. You probably all have been in that scenario where you have to work on a course maybe while it's being taught, or for those of you that are also faculty, that designing while you teach, it's a terrible predicament to be in. So on the fly doesn't work well online. We did also want to let you know that even though the book is not research focused, it's not heavy on research, we do have references in there. It's meant to be faculty friendly. It's meant to be easy to follow. Hopefully it's a fun read. We tried to kind of walk that fine line, but we do wanted to let you know that it's really is built on established ID practicals and practices and principles. And it also reflects that current research and things like high impact practice, community of inquiry, on the presence facets, and things such as that. So together the three of us do have a lot of experience. You can see there that collectively we have designed a lot of courses. We have experience ranging from teaching to design, as well as designing online courses across disciplines and for different levels. So we wrote this book to help IDs and faculty everywhere learn from our many experiences, including many of our lessons learned. So a little bit about how the book is structured. And we're going to kind of dive into this before we dive into the 8-step model, just to give you a sense of what additional items you can find in the book. Next slide. So as a brief orientation to the book itself, the first part is the full 8-step model, and that's what we're going to give you a brief overview of today. It is a very high-level overview, but each step has an in-depth treatment, a standalone chapter in the book, and each step is also accompanied by what we call a design doc. And the design doc is something that you can use, flexibly use to ideate and structure your design. And these are the ones also that are freely available on the website. And then all of those design docs, so you're working on your design incrementally, and then they all cascade into what we call a course blueprint. And that leaves you at the position where you're ready to then develop things into the learning management system. You can think of that course blueprint as a course map or alignment map. I know it's called different things at different institutions, but that is available on the website as well. And there's also a few of the steps that have what we call bonus documents, because they're more for development than for design. So things like creating video lectures or creating clear assignment prompts, especially with all the wraparound information that our online students need. So part 1 also includes a bonus chapter on online teaching. And then in part 2 of the book, We talk about some design cases. Hopefully they're a little bit fun to read. We tried to have like a Nancy Drew approach to the titles so that you can really see the model at work and the ways that you can flexibly use it. All right, so a little bit about something else that's in the book that is probably particularly appealing to you as instructional designers. We know that this can be some of the most difficult parts of being an ID, having those good conversations with faculty. Sometimes you don't always know the answer to those tough questions, or faculty, and I can say this because I've been in this role, you come in grumpy sometimes, and they're taking it out on you as the ID. So we included example consultations. Each of the 8 steps includes an accompanying faculty ID consultation example. And we try to highlight questions that faculty commonly ask, including those tough questions that it's really sometimes hard to have answers for on the fly. And so we provide one of these for free on the website so you can see how it's structured, but hopefully it gives you some ideas also for ways that you might be able to elevate and make your own consultations go a little bit more smoothly. I did mention that we have a bonus step for online teaching, and we kind of think of this chapter as a bonus step. It's really not part of the model, but of course, delivery is the execution of your design, and it's also the continuation of teaching presence. So it starts with the design, carries through with delivery and that facilitation and guidance as well. This chapter is also available for free on the website. And honestly, there's a goldmine of good ideas in there. This is a great thing to even, share with faculty that you're working with. And again, Penny's going to give you a tour of that website and how you can access these documents towards the end of the webinar. Okay, and then the second part of the book, as I mentioned, it is full of case examples, and these are based on our real life experiences. In a couple cases, we might have combined courses or added some elements, so no faculty or course can be identified. But it gives you a good example of how HIDOC can be used both proactively as you're designing a new course and also retroactively as maybe you're revising some things to address some common issues with online course design. Again, this is full of our own lessons learned, things that we wish we had known before we got, to the end of a course design, for example. It's also, great to use even as a case study. So for those of you that might be teaching instructional design or know faculty that are, there's a good opportunity to use this because you can have really good discussions on ways that you might have approached that, things that you might have done, proactively to stave off some of the issues that happened, even communicating potential issues to faculty. So I think this is a really good section, especially for instructional designers. Okay, so now let's move on to an overview, a mini dive into the 8 steps of the model. And again, this is a high-level overview, though, so think of it more as like the Cliff's Notes version of the in-depth information that you're going to find in the book. And it's also important to note that, again, while these are presented and best tackled sequentially, we really have built flexibility into this model to meet you wherever you are. So for example, if you have an existing online course, you may want to start with a deep dive into your learning objectives in step 2, or even online student support in step 7. But we're going to start at the beginning with step 1. All right, so the first step of HIDOC is learner analysis. And it's a little bit different than ADDIE because you specifically are thinking about the students that are going to be taking this course, and that ensures that you're starting with that learner-centered perspective that Andrea mentioned in her introduction. So before you start defining learning objectives or even thinking about the content that, maybe is included in the course and the order and structure of the course, think first about who your online learners are likely to be. So this step really asks you and faculty both to kind of step back, think critically about the key characteristics of your anticipated learners, while at the same time really being careful not to overgeneralize or stereotype. And though sometimes you typically can't control who takes your course, you can design for it. So this is, I think, a really good and sometimes complex, sometimes nuanced topic here, but this is a great place to start. I don't think that we sit down at the beginning of that design and really situate ourselves within that learner perspective. So this walks you through some things that other ID models really kind of skip over, and it really empowers you to design key course elements in anticipation of the likely learner characteristics that are ultimately going to contribute to that positive learning experience. So then we move on to step 2, and this is probably not a big surprise, but we're starting with the foundation of the design, and here's where you see those learning outcomes. Again, learning outcomes, where you want your students to be by the end of the course in terms of their learning application and their performance. So what they're going to be able to do with the new knowledge that they're learning and working with. Really starting with this results, that you want to see for your students at the end of the course. It makes sure that your design is a results-focused design rather than that content-focused design where you're starting with the textbook or starting with an existing syllabus, for example. So starting with your learning outcomes, that's the foundation of alignment. And alignment is, of course, where those key course elements ultimately connect back to what you intend for your students to learn and really make sure that they're connected well to the content that they're interacting with, which should support them doing well on those assessments and activities, ultimately leading them hopefully to mastery of those learning outcomes that you have for them. So in step 2, we'll guide you to create measurable objectives, but also ask you to step back a little bit first and think about the larger vision and scope for the course. If you're familiar with backward design, for example, that period where you're really thinking about those essential questions and maybe course goals, we've embedded that in this step as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Andrea, and she's going to continue on with step 3.
Okay, so thank you for passing the baton, Bethany. At the point that you get to step 3, course structure, you will start to draft out high-level course structure. And one thing that we emphasize kind of throughout the book is you're diving in, but you're always trying to keep that big picture view. So throughout the model and in this chapter, we'll talk a lot about the learning path. And learning path means 2 distinct things in the context of HIDOC and online courses. And the first is their cognitive learning path. So it's the sequence of what they'll learn and when. The second, though, is really important as well. And Bethany mentioned this early on. This is something that often gets missed when you go from face-to-face to online. It's the literal visual web-based learning path. So I'm sure we've all seen courses where in the LMS, there's a folder and everything's dumped in there. And you want to set something up that kind of guides students through visually as well. This is where this step, you start to identify key topics that will become modules. We'll say modules throughout, but lessons, units, whatever you use to kind of group things. And eventually we'll house your assessments and activities, which leads us right into step 4. Which is well-named assessments and activities. Bethany mentioned at the beginning, this is like a Cliff Notes version. This is a step with a lot of meat, and one that definitely requires time and thought. And it's something that people sort of struggle with. What's an assessment? What's an activity? So the 3 elements that we cover in this chapter are summative assessments, formative assessments, and learning activities. And the way we distinguish them is summative assessments, their main purpose is evaluation. They're big things that you use to ensure that your students achieved the learning objectives. They're almost always tied to 1 or more learning objectives. They're typically larger, worth more in the course content. Examples include major exams, end of semester papers, big projects. The second, formative assessment, they usually take less time, they're usually worth less. And their primary purpose is feedback to your learners on how they're doing getting to that mastery level. They often build up to those summative assessments. For example, a paper draft that leads to an end of the semester paper is a formative assessment. Timed quizzes that ultimately show students how they're doing, getting to their summative exam, formative assessment. And then learning activities are ways for students to practice their learning. They're often low stakes, no stakes. They're things that learners can do multiple times. It could be check your knowledge quizzes. It could be things that are in the LMS that never even report back to the faculty, H5P questions. And then when we talk about assessments and activities, we also encourage you to think about, are there ways that make sense to make these interactive in terms of creating that social presence and sense of community and what is called voice and choice. So for your assignments, think about, are there ways that students can bring their own voice into this? And for those of you who teach STEM, I'm in engineering, so happy to talk offline about how these things can apply to STEM contexts. And with choice, how can students have some decision-making power over how they're showing their work? So are they choosing a topic? Are they getting choice about, is it a paper versus a presentation, et cetera? And then this leads us to step 5, which, as Bethany pointed out, is often where people start. For us, we think it's really important to do this after you've gotten the foundational things in place. Instructional materials or content. So here, in general, we talk about 2 ways. This can be instructor created, which is often the default. It can also be instructor curated. So are there high quality materials out there that meet your learning objectives that you can include as well? You don't have to recreate or create everything. And we also talk about higher levels of cognitive engagement. So when you're thinking about content, is it something that your learners are going to be able to use or apply rather than passively consume or receive? It's very easy, as we know, somebody had put in the chat about just uploading a 4-hour lecture. It's very easy to overstuff an online course. So definitely want to think about realistically for your learners who are non-experts. It may take you 10 minutes to read this article. It may take them 2 hours. So to kind of give estimates to that. And then lastly, 2 crucial things with your content are accessibility and inclusivity. So with step 6, it would be remiss of us not to address technology and tools given the online environment and the importance of educational technology. And we do say pedagogy first. So it's important when you're thinking about your tools about what is going to align with your pedagogical goals, learning outcomes, learner needs, et cetera. And you also, if at all possible, we suggest use institutionally supported tools for a couple of reasons. One, your institution is more likely to have more people who can do accessibility things and interface with companies. 2, hopefully you have some built-in tech support that keeps you, or that keeps the instructor from becoming or the instructional designer, quite honestly, from becoming the help desk. Tools are another area in which you want to think about accessibility. And then moving to step 7, and Bethany's done a great job of pointing out kind of where our model adds to or augments some of the existing models. I like to say, like with kids, that we love all the steps the same, but step 7 is a little bit my favorite. So this is one that's often not as emphasized, and it's how you will support online learner success. We know it's harder to learn online. We know it requires more self-regulation, more emotion, more motivation, more ability to organize. And we know while we can't do those things for students, there are many things we can do to make it easier for them to be successful. These are things that include good organization, logical navigation, and clear policies and support options. One thing I say all the time is I like the Steve Krug. He wrote the Don't Make Me Think web usability model. I apply that to online courses. Don't make me think about the silly stuff. Don't make me spend extra time figuring out where to submit an assignment. Make me think about the assignment, not how to submit it. So I think that philosophy carries well to online. Another thing that might happen in face-to-face but gets forgotten online is detailed module overview. So introducing this chunk and kind of topically, what's it about? What are they expected to do? How does it connect? What are their activities and assignments for that week, 2 weeks, et cetera? And then contextualizing and describing your assignments. This is another thing that we see quite often. Just a quiz gets thrown up or a short description of a paper. And the reality is in face-to-face, a good instructor will open the assignment, talk it through, answer questions, maybe show past examples. So you want to include all of that that is easy to forget that you say when you're online. And then finally, step 8, as all of us know, an online course is never done, it's only offered. So, and while evaluation is a part of a lot of different models, we start with evaluation before the course opens. So in order to really commit to continuous improvement, you have to build it in before the course is even launched. And here we offer you a template for a revision roadmap as a living document that includes things like fixes that you know have to be fixed before the next time the course runs, wish list, things that might take more time, might enhance things, but aren't going to make a course break if they're not done. And then a big section, and these are also free on the website, of student feedback questions for a number of different levels: weekly, mid-semester, end of semester, assignments, etc. So that as the course is running, you are collecting feedback. And then how do you prioritize? How do you triage once you get all of that? There's also an extension of a step 8 teaching calendar to make sure that you have planned in how you're going to give feedback, how you're going to make the teaching manageable for you. So at this point, I am going to hand it over to Penny for the funnest part, which is the free stuff.
Yes, the free stuff is always the best. Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, now I want to give you a tour of the website and all the different free resources that we've created for you. And we can add the URL in the chat. So you can hit that. And then let me actually show the website. So this is our HIDOC website, and you can see here in the download section, here we have a big list of documents that you can download. We also have a link to our Google Drive here. And so if you jump into the Google folder, it includes the same documents. So you can download them from either place. And I'll say, just real quickly, these are all free to download, and you can share them, you can reuse them at your institution. What we ask is that you keep the citations in place because they are copyrighted material from the textbook, or from their copyrighted material from the book. And so just be aware of that. They're not listed under Creative Commons, but they are copyrighted, but we are sharing them with you here. So the first thing to look at is you'll notice there are a lot of design docs for each step. And these include questions that you can ask if you're designing a course, and IDs, especially if you're working with faculty on the design of the course. You can use these documents and go through them together, or you could work on it, have a meeting with the designer and then bring your notes back here. As you can see, just as an example in this part 2 here, they do include questions that you could ask of the subject matter expert to help draw the information out. So these are quite helpful. Bethany mentioned before, there's also the blueprint, and this kind of funnels things from the different design docs into one document that is, as I said, like a collective alignment, or, you may have different words to describe it, but it maps your objectives with the module topics, assessments, activities, materials, and technology. So this is your master course plan. And you also have access to the bonus chapter that Bethany mentioned before. And this chapter on delivery has a lot of tips for teaching online, including different things that you could do to build engagement. And then it also includes some sample, scrolling to the end here, some sample teaching calendars. And so for teachers, as they're planning their semester, what will they do on different days? There includes some example calendars in there too. So lots of tips for faculty in that chapter. This is a sample case that walks through how HIDOC might be applied in a design dilemma, right? As Bethany mentioned there, we use the Nancy Drew approach. So case number 4 is the case of the hands-on headache. And so you can read the details of the case, what the instructor's plan was, what the students actually experienced, and then at the end, how HIDOC can be used to improve the challenges that were in the course. And so you can see how HIDOC was applied there in the design cases, and that's one example that you can download. Bethany also mentioned the student, or Andrea mentioned the student feedback surveys. So different questions that you can ask of students to get more information about the courses. How many hours did you spend on a module? Or maybe what did students understand? What was not clear? What pieces of content were most helpful so you can do more of it? What pieces of content were least helpful so you can improve? So there are a lot of sample questions in here, depending on what type of information you're trying to get at the time. And then probably my favorite are the faculty ID dialogues. And these are sample conversations between the faculty. You can see with the cap and the institution here, and the ID with the gear and the light bulb. And these are just literally sample conversations about different topics. So as you go through the steps, for each step, there are different conversations that you can apply. And again, what it does, I think, especially for IDs that interact with faculty, it models an approach, right? How you could approach the situation, what kind of questions you could ask, and then how to react if the faculty are immediately on board, right? It gives some model kind of reactions or suggestions or questions that you can put in your toolbox, right? So those are helpful. And in the book, each step has these, as I mentioned. So you can just like kind of hone your practice, and especially for new designers, this might be helpful. But even for seasoned designers, you may not have conversations about these kinds of things very often, and so it's always nice to see like what an approach might be when you're discussing these topics. Okay, so if we jump back to the website, all of those steps, as I mentioned, are kind of crucial, right, to our practice as designers. So if you're interested in getting more detail about each of the 8 steps, the book is available. And I can just click on this and show you that it happens to be on sale right now at the publisher website. It's 20% off, and it's also available on Amazon. If you have the book, also, I want to ask everyone, please, if you have it, give us a review on Amazon. We're really interested in hearing what you have to say about it. So please do that. On the website, you can also sign up to be on our readers list. So information about new resources and new things we have planned, you can sign up and get more information about that. And then you can also contact us, right? You can use the contact form if you want to inquire about training or you have other questions. You can drop us a line through the website as well. So we go back to the slides. As you can see, lots of free stuff that you can have. So please go to the website and download the free stuff. And then we'll close and take questions at this time. So thank you all for your attention today.